Okay, so I thought I would just make a quick video to answer a few questions. This is the little shed project I've been working on. I've been busy working on other paid projects, so this was just kind of a thing I was putting together to help people, well, first understand framing, wall framing, and also SketchUp. So I had a question from a viewer about cutting holes into faces. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy my sheeting here, which you can do by using this selection tool, and then you just hold down the control key. Oops, sorry about all the zooming and stuff, but I have to. I'll explain to you why in a minute why that's important. Well, I'll just go ahead. The reason it's important to do the zooming is to make sure you snap at the corners properly, because one of the biggest problems with SketchUp, and I'll show you in a minute, is not putting things exactly where they're supposed to go. And that causes a lot of issues with dealing with surfaces. And that's funny, somehow the layout got off on this. Here's why you want to make sure your layout is done properly, because you see you want to be able to use full sheets. And let's just delete this sheet right here and find out. Okay, that's still hitting. Is this one hitting? See, that's somehow our layout got off. And this happens in real life too. See, our first sheet is where it's supposed to be on that stud. So let's see if my layout should be 16 from one side to the other, 32, 40, yeah, 48. So I think these studs, anyway, let me just go back. I'll fix that later. But that shows the importance of, in real life, on getting your layout properly done on your walls when you're making the stud marks for the studs. Because you can see here now, I don't have it, the studs are not, and it may be just they might have gotten screwed up. Let me take this one sheet off again. I'm just going to move. The window may have gotten it off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop me a line here, 16 inches, and that would be the center. And really I'm getting off track here, but I'm just showing you that in real life, you know, when you're framing this, if you don't pay attention to what you're doing, this is a lot harder to fix. In real life, you have to take all the studs and take them out and, you know, nail them back in the right place. So doing these drawings, laying this all out on a drawing actually helps you. Now when I copy this one, it should be correct. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'll fix that later, but you can, that's just an example. The point of this was to show how to punch a hole into a face. So since I have these sheets of plywood as a group, I have to double click on it. Okay, so one of the things that's important about SketchUp is to make sure your faces are all on the same plane. Okay, what happens is a lot of times, let's say I wanted to go and draw a 3-foot window. You also need to make sure you're on the face of the object of the face. See where it says on face there? So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to pull down. I'm just going to make this I don't know, 42 inches tall. It's kind of big in it. And then 24 inches. For now, I'm just going to make it 24 by 42, and I can make that line up with that. And you want to snap to your corners, you see, because now when I grab my push pull tool and I just hover, you can tell that I've created a division in those faces, because now when I hover over it, it becomes shaded. Now what you want to do is click right mouse click, or left mouse click, sorry, and I can either pull that out, or I can, if I want to cut it out, if I want to make an opening, I push it back to where it says on face of the other side of the OSB, and it'll automatically disappear. So I think the guy who was asking me about this was having trouble cutting an opening, but really all you have to do is draw the opening on the wall and make sure your lines are not on the wall, or make sure your lines are on the wall, on the face that you want to cut out. Then you can just push or pull it. So I could pull that out like that if I wanted to create a little weird thing, or I could push it back. Oops, I had the wrong tool. I had the move tool. Take the push pull tool and move it all the way back, and as soon as if I move it back to here, it's just going to be the same as if I had drawn those lines. But if I push it back the 1/2 inch, or well 7/16, whatever it is, it has to be on that face. So hover until it says on face, and then let off, and then it'll cut the opening for you. See, just like that. Now, the biggest problem you run into with SketchUp is non-planar lines. So, and let's just for the fun of it, I'll show you how you can easily. The reason I didn't worry about where this framed opening was on the inside is because I know how easy it is with the push pull tool. Now I can just grab the push pull tool again, and I can hover. See, if I hover there, it's on the face of it. If I go right there, it's on the edge, and I can just push that back to the opening. See, now I'll grab that one, push it to the opening, and then I'll hover back around, I'll rotate back around, I'll get my push pull tool again, and I'll see how I'm hovering. I'm not clicking until I get on the face that I want. You see, I can choose the face, and then choose the edge of it, push it back. You see, all that's a lot easier than trying to figure out where the opening is, you know, without seeing it. So I'm going to get my push pull tool again. I'm going to get that little edge right there, and I'm going to push up, and then you see right there where it says on face, that is a reference. See, I don't have to really know how far it is, as long as I can get to it, as long as I can reference it, I can make it, you know, line up there easily. So cutting an opening, that was, you know, in my OSB now. See how easy that was. So now an example of non-planar, let's see, what would be the term? It's not coplanar. So if I say I wanted to punch a hole into this one, and I just kind of haphazardly came over here and drew a line. Now you say, how can this be? Trust me, I've done this plenty of times where I think I'm on the face, but I'm not. Let's see, let's just come out. Let's see, am I on the face there? Now see, what's funny is I'm going to have a hard time doing it. But trust me, it's not that hard to get off the face. Let's just, and somehow it just, it's not a glitch, it just, see if I'm trying to give you an example. It's a bad example. Well, I got an idea. I'll just pull out a. It's funny that I'm having to go to this extent to show you this, because it happens, you know. So now I'm going to pop a line over. I'm just going to. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to delete that and that. Now, if I look at this straight on, that looks like I've drawn a line on that, right? Well, okay, so let's just assume I'm looking at it now. I pull this down, I draw this over here, and I line that up with that. Okay, now that looks like I've drawn a line on there, right? So you say to yourself, huh, that's weird, and you're like, why is that not working? And you grab your push pull tool, and you're like, what in the world? You know, I'm grabbing the whole thing, right? So you got to make sure. So, and this is an exaggerated case, but you see now, you can see that line is not on the same plane. As soon as I draw the line on the correct plane, you see it changes sort of a thickness, a darkness of the line, and you can tell now that I'm actually on that plane on the face. And see, I can cut myself an opening just like that. See? So a lot of the mistakes with SketchUp are just what I would say non-planar. What would be a good word? Is that a word? Non-planar, where things are not on the same plane, you know. And it's funny because you think to yourself, well, it's easy to avoid, but trust me, I've had some complicated models before where I've had to use, well, I'll give you an example. I'll go back to where the lines weren't, and most of the time, I'll tell you that, see, I used an extreme example. Most of the time, you're not going to be able to see the difference with the naked eye. Let me come over here and just do one like this, and I'll. Now let me do it again, and I'll go halfway even from that. And then what I'll do is I'll show you, I'll connect that line. Let's see, would that work? No, anyway. Let me delete this, that, and that. Now, again, when you're looking at it like this, you're like, I drew that on there. I know I did. And you get your push-pull tool and all that. Now, one thing you can do is you can, there are some tools in SketchUp, and I think this is because they have run into this, is, you know, people can't sometimes find the actual lines that are non-planar. That's not a term, I'm sure, but I'm using it. Is you can choose everything in that group, and you can say, you can right mouse click and intersect faces with selection. Okay, now let's see if what it did. That didn't actually work. I would have had to, I think the point here is I would have had to have had a line to come down to there. Now let's see if it would work. And you see that's still not on the same plane. Let's see if I just select those lines and I say intersect face. Intersect faces. So that means I would have to have a, bear with me for a second, just bear with me. I would have to have a line from here down and one from there over to there. And one of the reasons why I'm making this convoluted is because it can get this convoluted, I promise you. Oops. Well, there's another example too. If I'm working, here's another good example. I drew those lines outside of that group. I wasn't editing the group. Okay, you see how these lines are grayed out? The two lines that I just drew, and the old lines are still there. That's because I was not editing that group. So if I just go back and undo, I'll just give you an example. So now I'm back to just my plain old piece of OSB. Let's say I come over here and I want to cut a window into this. I'm on the face. It says I'm on the face, but it also says I'm on the face. See there? Now. And you'll say, that's weird. Why is that funky face? Why is that like that? And you'll be like, oh, and then you'll be like, oh, I'm gonna push pull, and see, it's independent. That whole thing is independent of the group. And you thought, well, I just drew a window on a piece of plywood, but you really didn't. Now what you can do to save time is you can go ahead and double click on your group and you can trace over that, and then you can go back and delete the one that you drew on top of the group and go back to the group and see now that one's still there. And if you push it back to the face of the back side, you know, the thickness of it, then it'll cut it out like that. So anyway, I know a lot of this is convoluted, but one of the viewers of my other video was saying that they were having a hard time with the push-pull tool, and most of that problem that you will have is making sure that your lines are in, you know, if you have groups or components, make sure you're editing that group or component, and also make sure that your lines for, you know, whatever you want to do on that for that push-pull are on the face of the object you're wanting to do it with. I mean, it's a lot of fun if you you know, like here we could create a sunshade here for this window. Look, I just realized I got the shade turned on. I mean the sun turned on. I'll turn it off, turn it back on. I've got the shadows. Now this is kind of cool because if you wanted to do like a solar study of what it would take to cover that window during that period of time, you could just draw your object, you know, and say, oh, okay, so it's going to take that, and so you can also say, well, it's not going to take that much. See how the farther I push it back, you could just bring it out. It's going crazy on me. bring that however far you want it to, see, to cover the window. That's what's kind of cool about SketchUp, and it has this little, the little dial right here. Let me just pull this out. Oops. Going nuts here. Push that back. On your, I was trying to pull this tool out off the toolbar so you could see it. You see, if I zoom in a little bit here, there we go. It's got the months here, and you can rotate it from January, February, March, April, May, June, July. So you see in the summer we're going to have good shading, and then in the winter you'll have good sunlight. And that's the whole point of solar shading, is to cover your openings in the summer but allow light to come in, allow the passive solar for the heating to come in the winter, you see. And so SketchUp's kind of cool that way. You can also do the time of day, so you can see the sun rotate. So that's just early in the morning, and that's dead noon, and in the evening. So at noon, basically we would have it like that. So if we show it at noon, you can see in the winter we're going to have nice sunlight for our window, but in the summer it'll be covered. Now this is what you would have to do is, let me put this back up here. Oops, I was trying to move that back up to my toolbar. I like it up there. Now what you have to do is you have to place your building, you know, in real life. I don't know how this got, how it went from making sure lines are on the right plane to solar shading, but it just shows you the cool tools of SketchUp that you need to make sure that your building is facing, in the drawing, is facing the right way to do this study. You know, you might say, well, my building's really not rotated perfectly, you know, north, south, or east, west, whatever. So you might have to rotate it, you know, to get it whatever angle to the sun yours is, and I'll show you the difference. So if we went down here now, you can see at 12 noon we're a little off. See, but that's the kind of studies you can do with SketchUp when you're designing your building, your home, or whatever it is. So anyway, I didn't mean for this to be a long video. In the next one, I'm going to go ahead and do the rafters. I got to go look at a job here. So in the next video, I'm going to build the roof for this. So that'll be cool. Thanks, guys.